There is a kind of power that does not announce itself. It does not enter the room loudly. It does not raise its voice to prove it is present. It does not rush to correct every insult, answer every accusation, or defend every misunderstanding. It sits still. It watches. It lets the room reveal itself before it chooses where to move. Machiavelli understood this better than most men are comfortable admitting. He knew that people rarely show you who they are when everything is calm. They show you when something touches their pride, threatens their desire, delays their reward, or denies them the image they were trying to protect. Pressure does not create a person. It exposes the person who was already there. And nothing exposes a person faster than reaction. Imagine a man sitting across from someone who knows exactly how to provoke him. The other person does not need strength. He does not need authority. He does not need proof. He only needs one sentence placed in the right wound. You always overestimate yourself. That is all. The man's face tightens. His shoulders rise. His voice changes before he notices it. He starts explaining what he has done, what he has built, what people have said about him, why that accusation is unfair. He speaks faster. He gives examples. He corrects details that did not need correction. He thinks he is defending his value, but he is doing something else. He is showing the other person exactly where the handle is. This is the truth most people spend their lives avoiding. Every uncontrolled reaction gives the world a place to grab you. Anger shows what insults can move you. Fear shows what can threaten you. Jealousy shows what you believe you lack. Desperation shows what you are afraid to lose. The moment your reaction becomes visible, it becomes useful to anyone patient enough to study it. That is why the less you react, the more control you have over the situation. Not because silence magically solves everything, not because calmness makes you superior, not because you should become cold, fake, or lifeless. Control comes from something simpler and harsher. When you do not immediately react, you stop giving away the map. A person who can predict your reaction can prepare your cage. They know which tone makes you defend yourself. They know which delay makes you anxious. They know which comparison makes you compete. They know which silence makes you chase. They know which insult makes you forget your plan and enter their game. And once someone knows what reliably pulls a reaction out of you, they no longer need to overpower you. They only need to trigger you. This is where most people lose themselves. They believe control means winning the argument, having the last word, proving they were right, making the other person understand. But often, the very need to prove that you are in control is the first sign you have already lost it. The room does not need your explanation as much as your ego does. That is the quiet trap. The more urgently you need people to see you a certain way, the easier you become to control. If you need to be seen as smart, a small doubt can make you over-explain. If you need to be seen as strong, a small disrespect can make you perform strength. If you need to be loved, a small withdrawal can make you abandon your standards. If you need to be admired, a small comparison can make you compete in a game you never meant to enter. Machiavelli would not ask whether your reaction is justified. Many reactions are justified. He would ask a colder question. Who benefits from you showing it right now? That question changes everything. Because there are moments when anger is real, but showing it gives the other person what they wanted. There are moments when you are hurt, but displaying the wound teaches someone where to strike again. There are moments when you are right, but rushing to prove it makes you look easier to disturb than the person who quietly lets the evidence stand. A controlled man is not a man without emotion. He is a man who does not hand his emotions to the room before he has understood what the room is doing. Stay with that idea, because it is the spine of everything that follows. The first discipline is not silence, it is delay. A pause before the answer, a breath before the message, a still face before the explanation, a moment of private awareness before public movement. In that pause, something important happens. The emotion is still there, but it is no longer the only thing in charge. Most people never build that pause. They feel and speak in the same second. They are wounded and responding before they have even understood what was touched. They confuse speed with honesty, intensity with truth, and reaction with strength. But speed often reveals what patience would have protected. Think about how many situations in your life did not become worse because of what happened, but because of how quickly you reacted to what happened. the message you sent too soon, the apology you gave just to end discomfort, the argument you entered because silence felt like defeat, the secret you shared because you wanted someone to understand you in that exact moment, the plan you announced because the thought of being unseen felt unbearable. None of those reactions felt weak at the time. They felt necessary. That is how reaction works. It disguises itself as necessity. But control often begins with the sentence you do not say, the look you do not give, the movement you delay, the emotional proof you refuse to provide. The world is always watching for handles. Not always cruelly, sometimes unconsciously. People press what moves. They repeat what works. They return to the place where your composure broke because, without meaning to, you taught them that place mattered. So the first lesson is this: do not teach people how to control you by reacting predictably. Let them wonder longer. Let the insult fall without immediately picking it up. Let the silence stretch without rushing to fill it. Let the question sit without giving away the part of you that feels accused. Let the room discover that your state is not available on demand. The less you react, the fewer handles people collect. And a man without obvious handles becomes difficult to move. The loudest person in the room is rarely the one with the most control. He may dominate the air. He may interrupt, explain, laugh too loudly, correct too quickly, and answer questions nobody forced him to answer. But if you watch closely, you will see something leaking from him. Information. His words reveal where he is insecure. His tone reveals where he needs approval. His unnecessary details reveal what he is trying to hide. His long explanations reveal which judgment he fears. Every sentence he adds after the point has already been made becomes a small confession. Talking too much is not always communication. Sometimes it is fear looking for a costume. A man who cannot tolerate silence will eventually tell you more than he intended. He will talk to soften tension. He will talk to repair an image. He will talk to make sure you do not misunderstand him. He will talk because the empty space between two people feels like a threat, and he does not realize that the threat is not the silence. The threat is what the silence reveals about him. Machiavelli understood the value of withheld words, not because silence is noble by itself, but because words are expensive when the situation matters. Once spoken, they leave your possession. They enter the room. They become evidence. They become material. They become something another person can remember, reinterpret, repeat, or use. The careful man does not spend words because he is afraid. He spends them because they serve a purpose. There is a difference. The uncontrolled man speaks to relieve pressure. The controlled man speaks to shape reality. Watch what happens when someone challenges the uncontrolled man. He reacts with explanation. He gives background nobody requested. He tries to prove his intention. He adds emotional color. He explains why he did what he did, why he felt what he felt, why his choice made sense, why he is not the kind of person the other person is suggesting he might be. By the end, the other person knows far more than they knew at the beginning. They know what accusation scares him. They know what image he wants protected. They know what language makes him defensive. They know how long he will talk if they simply look unconvinced. They did not defeat him. They let him open himself. This is why over-explaining is dangerous. It gives the appearance of clarity, while often revealing a lack of internal authority. When a person is settled inside himself, he does not need to decorate every decision with a public defense. He can answer, he can clarify, he can correct what must be corrected, but he does not bleed his inner world into every room that asks for access. That is control. Not silence forever, not secrecy for the sake of seeming mysterious. Control is knowing the difference between what needs to be said and what your insecurity wants to add. The extra sentence is usually where the loss happens. You know that sentence, the one after the clean answer, the one you add because the other person still looks doubtful, the one you send after the message was already complete, the one that begins as clarification but slowly turns into pleading, defending, proving, or exposing. A person with control can stop while the silence is still uncomfortable. That discomfort is not an enemy, it is a test. Most people fail it instantly. They feel the room waiting, and they rush to fill the space with themselves. But the person who can remain steady while nothing is being said becomes hard to read, And in any serious situation, the harder you are to read, the harder you are to move. This is where the fox survives. The fox does not announce every hunger. It does not explain every turn. It does not tell the forest where it will be tomorrow. The lion roars, and every animal knows its mood. The fox watches, and no one knows exactly what it knows. Strength may make people notice you. Restraint makes them uncertain around you. And uncertainty, when carried calmly, has weight. But there is a trap here. Some people hear this and turn silence into performance. They become stiff, artificial, dramatic. They think not speaking makes them powerful. It does not. Silence with insecurity behind it is still insecurity. People can feel the performance. The point is not to look silent. The point is to become less internally available to every provocation. You can speak warmly and still be controlled. You can laugh naturally and still be guarded in the right places. You can be kind without being transparent. You can answer without surrendering the whole room inside you. That distinction matters. Because the goal is not to become someone no one can reach. The goal is to stop giving full access to people who have not earned it, situations that do not deserve it, and emotions that should be processed before they are displayed. So begin with your words. Before you explain, ask, what am I trying to protect right now? Before you defend, ask, did this person ask for truth? Or are they trying to pull a reaction? Before you share a plan, ask, do I want accountability or do I want applause before the work is done? Before you answer immediately, ask, would a pause give me more control than speed? These questions do not make you weak. They return you to yourself. Because many people are not listening to understand you. They are listening to place you. They are learning what you value, what you fear, what you cannot tolerate, what makes you hurry. Information is currency, and people often spend it without realizing they are poor. A controlled man is careful with words because he understands their cost. He knows that not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every question deserves depth. Not every silence deserves filling. Not every person deserves the private reason behind a public choice. When he speaks, there is less noise. His words begin to carry weight. The man who says less often becomes harder to ignore. So if this is landing somewhere real, do not turn it into a quote you admire and forget. Watch yourself in the next conversation. Notice the moment you want to add more than necessary. Notice the heat behind the explanation. Notice whether you are speaking from clarity or from the fear of being misread. Then stop one sentence earlier. That is where control begins to return. Silence is not empty. In the hands of a reactive person, silence feels like punishment. In the hands of a controlled person, silence becomes a mirror. It shows what the other person does when you stop giving them the reaction they expected. That is why silence unsettles people who rely on control. They are used to pressing a button and watching something happen. They accuse and you defend. They withdraw and you chase. They disrespect you and you explode. They doubt you and you prove. They delay and you panic. Their power depends on the predictability of your response. But when you do not react, the pattern breaks. Suddenly, they have to reveal more of themselves. A person who only wanted clarity will remain calm. A person who wanted domination will become irritated. A person who was testing your insecurity will push harder. A person who lied will overbuild the story. A person who expected you to beg will become confused when you do not move toward them. This is why the pause is so powerful. The pause does not simply protect you. It exposes the intention behind the pressure. Imagine someone sends you a message designed to disturb you. Not directly cruel, not openly aggressive, but placed with enough ambiguity to make your mind start running. The old version of you answers immediately. You try to clarify. You ask what they meant. You defend yourself against something they have not fully said. You give them your attention, your anxiety, your energy, and your position. But another version of you reads the message and does nothing for a while. Not as a game, not as punishment, as self-command. You let the first wave pass. You let the need to fix the tension lose its grip. You let your nervous system realize that not every emotional disturbance is an emergency. Then, from a clearer place, you decide whether the message deserves a response at all. That delay changes the situation. Now you are not being pulled. You are choosing. Most people never understand how much of their life is spent answering emotional summons. Someone creates discomfort, and they appear. Someone creates doubt, and they explain. Someone creates distance, and they run. Someone creates disrespect, and they perform outrage. Their attention is not governed by intention. It is governed by whoever knows how to disturb them. That is not freedom. Machiavelli would see it plainly. The easiest person to govern is not the weak person. It is the predictable person. Strength becomes useless when it can be aimed by someone else. Intelligence becomes fragile when it can be rushed. Love becomes dangerous when it can be turned into panic. The less you react, the more others reveal. This is not because people become honest out of respect for your silence. It is because silence removes their ability to hide behind your noise. When you stop filling the room with defense, justification, emotion, and urgency, their behavior becomes clearer. They must decide what to do with the space. And what they do with that space tells you more than their words. Some will soften, some will attack. Some will explain themselves because your calm makes them hear their own tone. Some will accuse you of being cold because they preferred you reactive. Some will try old methods harder because they do not know who they are when you are no longer easy to move. Let them show you. This is one of the quietest forms of power, allowing people to reveal their relationship with your boundaries. A person who respects you can survive your pause. A person who only benefits from your lack of control will resent it. That resentment is information. Do not rush to smooth it over. Many people lose control because they are addicted to immediate emotional resolution. They cannot let tension exist. They cannot leave a question unanswered. They cannot sit with the possibility that someone is disappointed, irritated, confused, or unsure about them. So they trade their position for relief. They apologize too soon. They explain too much. They soften a boundary. They send another message. They give access again. And for a moment, the tension reduces. But the cost is high. They have taught the other person that pressure works. A controlled person can tolerate tension without surrendering to it. He can let a room be uncomfortable. He can let a message wait. He can let a false accusation hang long enough for its weakness to show. He can let someone misread him for a while without rushing to repair an image in every mind. This does not mean he is passive. Passivity is doing nothing because you are afraid. Control is waiting because movement would be premature. There is a huge difference. The controlled man still acts, but he acts after seeing. He acts when the situation has revealed enough. He acts from choice, not reflex. That is why his movement has force. It is not scattered by every emotional wind. It arrives with direction. If you watch powerful people carefully, the real ones, not the loud performers, you will notice that they are often slower than everyone else at first. Slower to answer, slower to show preference, slower to display irritation, slower to declare what they will do. But when they move, people feel it. Because their movement was not wasted earlier, they did not spend their power reacting to every minor disturbance. They kept it until the moment mattered. This is the discipline most people never build. They want control, but they also want the pleasure of reacting. They want calmness, but they also want the release of saying exactly what the emotion demands. They want respect, but they also want to answer every slight. They want mystery, but they also want to be understood instantly. You cannot have both. Every situation asks for a payment. Either you pay with patience now, or you pay with regret later. So when the pressure comes, and it will, remember this: the first wave is rarely the truth. The first wave is heat. It is pride, fear, memory, ego, old wounds, old habits. If you move from that wave, you are not responding to the situation. You are responding to everything the situation awakened. Wait until you can see the difference. That waiting is not weakness. It is where your control gathers itself. Your face is where the world first looks for permission to move you. Long before you speak, something has already spoken. The eyes that sharpen too quickly, the jaw that locks, the smile that arrives half a second late, the breath that changes when a certain name is mentioned, the stillness that is not calm but wounded, the voice that tries to sound normal and fails by trying too hard. People read these things. Some read them consciously, most read them by instinct. Human beings are trained by survival to notice shifts in other human beings. They may not be able to explain what they saw, but they feel when your position changes. They feel when you are threatened. They feel when you need approval. They feel when the room has entered your body. This is why emotional transparency in high-stakes moments can become expensive. You may think you are simply being real, and sometimes, in the right place, with the right person, honesty is necessary. But not every room deserves immediate access to your internal weather. Not every person who sees your pain will honor it. Not every situation becomes safer because you show exactly how much it affected you. Some rooms do not hold your emotion. They use it. This is the part many people resist because it sounds cold. But it is not cold. It is accurate. Your public emotions are information. Once shown, they can be remembered. Once remembered, they can be tested. Once tested, they can become a strategy against you. Someone notices that a joke about your status makes you stiff. They repeat it later. Someone notices that delayed replies make you restless. They delay again. Someone notices that disagreement makes you over-explain. They disagree just enough to make you perform. Someone notices that being ignored makes you chase. They pull back whenever they want proof of control. They are not always doing this with a villain's mind. Often, people simply repeat what works. That is why your composure matters. Composure is not pretending nothing affects you. It is deciding what gets to be visible before you understand the cost of showing it. The mask of strength is often misunderstood. Weak men wear masks to hide emptiness. Controlled men use composure to protect timing. They do not deny what they feel. They deny the room immediate ownership of it. There is dignity in that. Think of two people receiving the same insult in front of others. The first reacts instantly. His face burns. His voice rises. He laughs too sharply, then attacks back, then explains why the insult was wrong, then tries to make everyone understand he was not bothered. The more he insists he was not bothered, the more obvious it becomes that he was. The insult succeeded. The second person hears it. He pauses. He looks at the speaker without rushing. Maybe he asks one calm question. Maybe he says nothing. Maybe he lets the words reveal more about the person who said them than about himself. The room feels the difference. It is not that the second person felt nothing. He may have felt more than the first. But he did not let the emotion take the microphone. That is control. The less your face reacts, the less your position is exposed. This does not mean you should become wooden or unreachable. People trust warmth. People connect with humanity. A life lived behind permanent armor becomes another kind of prison. But there is a difference between chosen vulnerability and uncontrolled leakage. Chosen vulnerability says, I trust you with this. Uncontrolled leakage says, I cannot hold this. The first builds connection. The second invites control. Knowing the difference can change your life. In serious moments, your face should not be a public screen displaying every private movement. Your voice should not betray the exact place pressure landed. Your body should not tell the room that it has succeeded before your mind has decided what anything means. Train this quietly, not in a theatrical way, not by staring blankly at people, not by acting superior. Train it in ordinary moments, when someone interrupts you, when a message disappoints you, when a person misunderstands your intention, when someone tests your boundary with a casual comment, when silence tempts you to chase. Feel the first movement inside you. Then do not immediately translate it outward. Let it exist without obeying it. This small discipline builds a reputation over time. People begin to feel that you are not easy to disturb. They may not say it directly, but they adjust. They bring you different problems. They trust you under pressure. They hesitate before trying cheap tactics. They stop assuming every emotional button will produce a show. Composure compounds. Every time you do not give the room the reaction it expected, you remove one more handle. Every time you stay steady when the old version of you would have performed pain, anger, fear, or need, you become less available to manipulation. But remember the deeper point. The goal is not to win admiration for being calm. That is another trap. If your calmness is just a new performance, then you are still controlled by the audience. You are simply performing control instead of performing emotion. Real control is quieter. It does not need witnesses. It exists when no one praises you for it. It exists when you are alone with the message you want to send and choose not to send it. It exists when your chest is tight, but your hand does not move toward the old habit. It exists when you let a person reveal themselves instead of rushing to repair the discomfort they created. That kind of control is not glamorous, but it is real, and real things last longer than performances. So do not aim to look unbothered. Aim to become harder to govern from the outside. There will still be moments when emotion shows. You are human, but the more you practice the pause, the less often the world gets direct access to your steering wheel. The face becomes calm because the inner chain of command has changed. Feeling is allowed. Reaction is reviewed. Movement is chosen. That is the order. Distance is how you take the handle back. Not dramatic distance. Not childish withdrawal. Not the silent treatment disguised as maturity. Those are still reactions. They are still attempts to control the other person because you have not yet controlled yourself. Real distance is different. Real distance is the moment you stop moving toward what keeps reducing you. It is the moment you stop giving immediate access to people, conversations, rooms, habits, and emotional traps that have proven they know how to make you abandon your own position. This is where many people misunderstand control. They think control means staying close and winning inside the closeness. Winning the argument, winning the person back, winning the respect, winning the explanation, winning the final word. But sometimes control is leaving the game where the rules were designed around your reaction. Some people do not need to defeat you. They only need to keep you engaged. If they can keep you explaining, chasing, proving, defending, hoping, checking, waiting, and reacting, they have already taken enough of your life. Attention is not a small thing. Where your attention goes, your emotional life follows. Where your emotional life follows, your decisions begin to bend. And where your decisions bend repeatedly, your character begins to form around the wrong center. Machiavelli would understand this without sentiment. A person who can keep you emotionally occupied can influence your movements without ever giving you a direct order. Distance restores proportion. It lets you see the situation without standing inside the heat of it. It lets you ask questions that attachment refused to ask. Is this person safe or only familiar? Is this opportunity aligned or only flattering? Is this argument necessary or only addictive? Is this relationship asking for love or feeding on reaction? That is why people who benefit from your reactivity often dislike your distance. They call it cold. They call it changed. They call it pride. They say you are not the same anymore, and sometimes they are right. You are not the same person who could be pulled back into the same emotional loop with the same old bait. Let that unsettle them. Their discomfort is not always your responsibility. A controlled man is not cruel with distance. He does not disappear to punish. He does not withhold warmth to create dependence. He does not play games with access because he is secretly desperate to be chased. He simply becomes more selective. Selective with his words. Selective with his time. Selective with his explanations. Selective with his emotional availability. Selective with who gets to see him unguarded. Selective with what deserves his immediate response. Selection is not arrogance. It is stewardship. Your inner world is not a public lobby. There are thoughts, fears, hopes, plans, wounds, and desires inside you that should not be handed to everyone who shows interest. Some people are curious, not caring. Some people are entertained, not loyal. Some people want access without responsibility. Some people want your softness because it gives them leverage, not because they intend to protect it. Distance allows time to test the difference. Time reveals what charm hides. Time reveals whether respect remains when access is limited. Time reveals whether someone values you or only values your availability. Time reveals whether your boundary creates understanding or resentment. Watch that closely. A person who respects you may not always like your boundary, but they will recognize your right to have it. A person who needed control will treat your boundary as an attack. The less you react to silence, absence, rejection, or pressure, the more control you regain over yourself. Because these are the 4 places where many people lose their shape. Silence makes them speak against themselves. Absence makes them chase what is not choosing them. Rejection makes them bargain away their value. Pressure makes them decide before they can think. If you can remain whole in those 4 moments, you become difficult to rule. The untouchable person is not untouched by life. He still feels deeply. He still cares. He still has private nights where the emotion is heavy and no audience is there to admire his restraint. He still wants certain things to work. He still remembers what hurt. He still has to sit with himself when the old reaction rises and asks to be obeyed. But he no longer turns every feeling into an instruction. He can feel anger without becoming reckless. He can feel desire without becoming available to disrespect. He can feel loneliness without inviting the wrong people back in. He can feel fear without letting fear write the next message. He can feel love without surrendering the authority of his own life. This is the final meaning of the title. The less you react, the more control you have over the situation, because the situation no longer owns the first move inside you. You do. Control is not domination over other people. It is ownership over the pause between what you feel and what you show. It is the ability to let emotion arrive without letting it govern the room. It is the discipline to ask, before action, whether this movement serves your future or only relieves your discomfort. And if this idea has shown you one place where you have been giving away the handle, do not ignore that place. That is where the work begins, not in the dramatic moments, in the next small one, the next message, the next insult, the next silence, the next urge to explain, the next moment. Your face wants to reveal what your mind has not yet understood. Pause there. That pause is not empty. It is you returning to yourself. And when enough of those pauses accumulate, people will feel the difference. Some will respect it, some will resent it, some will test it. Some will leave because they only knew how to relate to the version of you they could trigger. Let them. The fox does not roar to convince the forest it exists. It watches. It waits. It moves when movement serves survival, not ego. It does not react to every sound. It does not expose every hunger. It does not give the forest a handle and then wonder why it keeps being caught. Be that kind of dangerous. Not loud, not cruel, not fake. Simply no longer easy to move. And the next time something tries to pull a reaction from you, remember this before you answer. The world can only hold what you keep handing it.